Fix your sound.
Hello. Hey, I think we have sound now. I see sound bar. It might not be that great. Now I just need to get my slides back and I'll be back in business. That's not what I want. Where? Sorry, my screen's not mirrored so that I can have the speaker notes. Hello.
Down at the bottom of the screen.
Oh, okay.
So serene.
Rob's got sound.
Nice.
Now we just need to get slides back. I'm going to share the screen so this is actually working. It's good to have someone out there.
Good stuff.
And that's annoying. We'll get there. It's the worst. I'm gonna not do.
I do this.
Almost there. We're just gonna do it like that, I think, so that. Can all of you see that still? Okay. Sharing my screen. Everybody remotely can see it now. You guys can see it ish, maybe, kind of. See my notes there at the bottom. Let's make that go away. All right, here we go. I need my notes back.
So how long have you been playing with this?
Well, it's been changing a lot, so on and off for the past several months. Is this gonna share my screen? Oh my God, I've got my notes. You got my notes?
No.
The screen is shared. Remote people can see it. I think we're good. Yeah, we're good. Does anybody remember what I was talking about? Yeah, okay. So, this is just another real example. I'm sure this isn't accurate anymore, but this is Gmail at one point in time, and you can see like all these divs. It just goes on and on. It divs all the way down. Like, I don't know, like, I think it probably just keeps going. They never close those divs. So, HTML just like hasn't kept up with the times. Like we still have all the kind of these like arcane things like divs and p tags and spans. Like what does that even mean? Like you look at it and if you don't have that text around it, it's like totally hard to understand. So the goal with web components is to like turn these divs into components that look like other HTML elements, and we can read the code and see what's going on. Like I know you don't know what a paper tab element is, but I think you can infer like what's going on here. So we got that kind of declarative approach, like give me a tab. Like I don't want to tell you how I have to do it, I just want it right here. And it's easy to read. And we'll talk about extending that a little bit later with Polymer. So the next pillar of web components is pillar number 2, since we had that little break, is templates. So templates are HTML code that is totally inert, and it doesn't do anything until you stamp it out, until you actually like make it something real. So this is an example of a template that just has like a div in it and an image, and even you can put some JavaScript in it if you want, but it doesn't do anything. Like it'll just sit there and be inert until it's cloned or reused. It's just like a fragment of a page. And this will make more sense again when we move a little bit further on. This is a very big part of Polymer because it allows you to like define the shape of one of those components. So the next one, and this sounds scary, the shadow DOM. And all the shadow DOM does is provide some sort of like scoping for HTML. Because like usually HTML is just like this big old ball of stuff. Like if you use JavaScript and you're looking for something with the ID of 1, 2, 3, like it's looking through everything. Like there's no boundaries. So Shadow DOM allows you to have those boundaries at various levels, such as this video tag. So the video tag's an HTML5 element, and you may or may have not used it, but you've definitely seen it if you've ever gone to like YouTube or whatever. So it looks like this when you're defining it. It looks pretty boring, right? And you think you're just getting all this stuff for free. Well, like browser makers have kind of been holding out on us because there's actually a huge shadow DOM behind this. It's totally encapsulated. And this has been in browsers since they've started implementing these newer HTML5 tags. So in Chrome DevTools, it's not shown here, but if you go to the little like gear up there in the right-hand corner, if you use Chrome, you can like go into the DevTool settings and show like user client shadow DOM, I think is what it says. And then also will actually show you. So we have our video tag here, and then there's a shadow root, which is normally hidden. You can see all these things that like comprise this video element. So that's Shadow DOM. We'll talk about it a little bit more. So the fourth pillar of web components is HTML imports. And anybody who's been doing JavaScript and hearing about the next version of JavaScript, ECMAScript 6, like may know a little bit about HTML imports. And it's basically just a way that makes HTML5 or HTML files first-class citizens. In today's world, like it's really hard to like take one file of HTML and like put it into another file of HTML. You have to like use JavaScript or do acrobatics of some sort. But HTML imports in ES6 and web components allow you to just like slurp up some extra HTML. So we'll see how these work together in a little bit. But here's an example. Like Bootstrap has a bunch of stuff. You have your like CSS, you have your JavaScript, and a whole bunch of other stuff. You've got these CSS links and your script links. Well, that's kind of a hassle to like even copy paste all that out. With an HTML import, it just goes down to one line where all that script tag and stuff that we just saw on the previous slide, it's all contained in bootstrap.html, and you only have to like import that one place. So that's pretty nice. And so you might be wondering, what's that?
And it only took 20-something years.
I have to roll those ones.
So you might be wondering, if I'm composing a website that's made out of all these little tiny chunks, well, if you're into website performance at all, you know, oh, all these extra requests, that's really going to slow my like time first page load. Like that's really going to jam up my like 4 connections that I have to the server. So Polymer provides a tool, I'll just mention it now, called Vulcanize, that kind of like compresses all those things together. Very similar to any other JavaScript compression sort of thing out there. So it's available for Grunt and Gulp. So these are the 4 pillars of web components. Everybody still with me? We're almost past the boring part. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about how these things are standards now and how Chrome has implemented them all and Firefox has implemented them all. The surprise dark horse is Opera's implemented them all too, for all this 1% of people in the world that use it. But that's like kind of unacceptable in a professional setting. Like, I mean, Chrome has like what, 50% of the market share-ish? So there's a like whole slew of users that you're not able to serve with this. Well, that's where Polymer comes in, and this is where this starts getting fun. With Polymer, like one part of Polymer is a polyfill that for the last 2 major versions of all browsers, so that means IE 10 and 11, which some people that's still a non-starter. And all the other browsers are pretty much evergreen, so you don't have to worry about it. But with Polymer, it has a lightweight polyfill as of version 1.0 that's fast and provides all the functionality we need in all the major browsers. So that's pretty exciting. So now we can talk about Polymer. So after hearing about web components, you might be thinking, what could Polymer possibly bring to the table? Like, it sounds like everything's already covered, right? Well, the API around web components is kind of obtuse. It's hard to understand, and so Polymer provides the sugar that allows normal people like you and me to be able to like use web components. And the other big part is it has It didn't for a while, a couple months back, but as of 1.0, it has a very extensive library of like canned components that cover a lot of typical use cases. And if you're kind of a Google fanboy like I am, you've probably heard talk of material design that they announced in 2014. They have a whole catalog of elements that extend native elements that provide like material design for free, so you don't have to like go read the huge material design spec and try to figure it out on your own. So I think a lot of people kind of like feel resistant to Polymer because it feels like a framework when you start looking at it, but it's not a framework. Like you can use stuff that you create with Polymer, you can use it with Angular, you can use it with React, all that might turn out a little weird. You can use it with Ember, you can use it with whatever. I think Ember's called Glimmer now, I don't even know. So, last week they announced the production 1.0 release of Polymer, and so we're going to do a little live coding. I'm going to show you some examples of what it can do, and hopefully that makes more sense than me just like going through and reading like the API documentation, because that's boring. We just kind of did that. So if anybody that isn't a working employee wants to follow along, that's the Wi-Fi. It doesn't look like anybody has one, so I'll just plow along here. So this is what you need. Anybody who wants to follow along, I think all you guys have Node.js and a code editor and Git. So we're going to be using this thing that they also just released called the Polymer Starter Kit, and it pretty much like gives you your whole development environment all set up for you. It's kind of a tiny little example app, so you can Git clone it or just use they have like a zipped up version that has all the Bower dependencies and everything pulled down for you. So that's the Polymer Starter Kit, and I'm going to be using it. So the first thing we'll talk about is like element registration and lifecycle. I'm going to have to reconfigure my monitors now. It won't take as long as last time, I promise. All right, we're in Mirrorland. I'm going to check the screen share here to make sure that we're getting the right thing. Looks like we are. All right. So, registration and lifecycle. I'm going to get my stuff up here. That's not the right project. Or that one. Or that one. Okay, so I'm going to give you a little tour of the Polymer Starter Kit before we get going here, and I'll make my font much, much larger. Actually. See that okay? Back, Tim. Okay, so there's kind of a couple important things just to kind of give you an overview of the application. Of course, there's the index.html, which is just in the root of the app directory of Polymer Starter Kit. You can ignore kind of these meta tags. Most of everything that's going on here is allowing people. It's a trend in the industry to allow web applications to get dragged to the home screen of a device, so that you can just like click on an icon and go to that website. So all this business here is just providing the icons for that capability on various platforms. So we'll just skip over that because that's not what we're here for. So this is where it gets interesting. We have this web components light.js, and this is that polyfill that I was talking about that Polymer provides. It provides all that ability for custom elements and templating and shadow DOM, and that we talked about earlier. There's one thing though, you might be wondering why it says it's web components light. That's one of the things they did, is apparently the polyfill for shadow DOM was like super slow, super invasive, and very large. So they replaced it with a shim, whatever that means, called shady DOM. And it provides all the functionality without the bloat. It's Coors Light. Maybe it's Miller Lite. So that's what that does, and so that ensures that on the last 2 versions of all major browsers, we can do the stuff we're trying to do. So this next thing, hey, look at that! It's an HTML import, and it has this elements file that we're bringing in. And I'm gonna have to do this for every file. It's terrible. This is all of our elements that, by default, this application is providing us. We got all these like different paper elements and iron elements, and I've got some of my elements down here that we'll get to in a little bit. And kind of the last major part is app.js, and actually, admitting my ignorance here, I don't really understand the syntax of this like function wrapped in a parentheses that, I don't know, maybe you JavaScript guys can help me out with what's going on here, but. What's that?
It looks just like JavaScript.
I mean, this is totally JavaScript, but I'm just like, this like function that.
That makes it a closure, so it's look up closure.
Does it end up on the global screen?
Yeah. So anyway, what this is operating off of, you can see that we're like using this query selector to get the app ID tag. So this is kind of a feature that I'll probably gloss over because I don't understand it very well. But Polymer provides this helper element of DOM bind that allows you to kind of have a template that isn't an element of its own, but it provides you all of the Polymer functionality. So if you do DOM bind, like we can make that application where we can start throwing Polymer sort of functions on it. And that's all that's going on there. So let me get this running. And once you've built the project, you can just run gulp serve. I'll make this bigger too. What are we doing? A little bigger. So it'll just take a minute to get a local web server fired up, and it also fires up a remote web server if you guys want to like try to hack me or whatever while I'm doing this. So this is what the application looks like from the get-go. It's like pretty boring, right? But it's got material design, yeah. So it's got like the little it used to be called hot dog menu, but I guess it's hamburger menu now. I can't keep up with these things. So yeah, it's kind of got a RESTful sort of interface. What's that?
Where do I get your dictionary?
I use the internets. So yeah, you can see that my URL changes as I go around these various things, but it's essentially like a single page application where I'm not like reloading in between these different pages. So we'll get to data binding in a bit, but anybody who likes AngularJS might be a fan of like two-way data binding. Polymer has it too in kind of a different way. So I can change the greeting here to be like, hey. So that's kind of where we start off. Like, there's not a lot going on, so we're going to add some cool things to this. We're kind of going to take an element from the very base level. This is what you would do in like your first tutorial with Polymer. We're going to make a new element, and after we kind of like tour some of the functionality of that, we're going to actually use some of the pre-made elements that are in these catalogs that Google provides. And if any of you get overwhelmed or bored, feel free to leave or ask questions. Let's get to it. I don't have anything more to say about this. There's one really cool thing that if we get to it or we want to talk about it afterwards is anybody that follows Chrome, like there's a service worker that allows you to do like offline caching of content. I have a demo for that that'll take like 2 minutes, but we'll do it at the end of the thing. It's pretty awesome. Okay. So we've got our application here, and now that we know what it looks like, we've got our Polymer starter kit, and we have kind of this text that's saying our features that we now have. We can find this in here. We can go down and be like, oh, well, we've got our paper menu that has, oh, that's our menu. Cool. It doesn't just say div with an ID of like, I don't know, my cool menu or whatever. Then we can go down, we've got the header panel, which is kind of that top blue bar. We can keep going down. Oh, we have our like pages for our single page application. Sweet. And now without even like searching for the content that was on the screen, like I kind of know where I am, but now we can see it like looking for more web app layouts. There, it's down here. So this whole section right here, in this Iron Pages element, we have this section that's like the home page for the application. So I feel like that it feels a little weird because like I've never seen HTML that looks like this before, unless you're like using Angular and making your own like directives. So more and more things are starting to look like this. So let's make a tag. Let's call it, I'm going to call it name badge. How about that? So I got my tag right. Well, reload it for me, but I'm going to reload it anyway. That didn't do anything because tag doesn't exist, but at least HTML is forgiving and it doesn't like blow up on us. So the first thing we have to do is define or register this element. And so we'll have to just wire that up a little bit. So you remember that we included the elements.html. I'm going to pop over there and I'm going to make a new import. So I'm just doing an HTML import here. And I'm going to point it at a file that does not exist yet. Call it name badge. Close that tag. Save that up. We're going to go in here in my elements directory, and I'm just going to make a new file called name badge. And there we go. So the first thing I'm going to do is just make a script tag for my like Polymer code to live in, and I suppose. So this is something you usually want to do if you're like making portable elements, because somebody might use a Polymer element and they only have that one Polymer element on the page. So in each one, you have to import the Polymer library. I don't have to do it in this case because I already have Polymer all over the place. And that's what's cool about like HTML imports. Like if you can specify the same library all over the place, it's not going to like import it 500 times. It's just going to do it once. So import and sure. Oh, yep. Yay. Thanks. Bower components. So Bower, if you don't know it, it's just installing my dependencies, and Bower is like the kind of de facto way of getting all these Polymer elements. I mean, Polymer or Bower is super easy. So if you know what element you want, and we'll look at the little shopping cart that they have. It's pretty cool. That allows you to demo and pick the elements that you want. So Bower components, Polymer, Polymer.html. What's that? Okay, so this is like the only function you need to know in Polymer is the Polymer function. And it takes an object, so that's what those curly brackets mean. And the only required property of that object is the is function. And we're going to call this name badge. So if you recall, that's the same name that I assigned my element. That's like super boring, so I've like defined this empty element that does nothing. So I'm kind of going to jump ahead here, but there's these lifecycle methods that allow you to use callbacks to execute functions when certain things happen to the element, and one of them is ready. And so I'll just make a function here that happens when ready, and I'm going to set the inner HTML of this element to Canal, because that's my name and it's a name badge. So unless I mess something up, which of course I didn't, we're gonna reload this and oh look, there's my name. So I'm gonna inspect this, and if we look, ignore all those errors, the code is flawless. If we look at this, we've got a sweet name badge tag that has content of Tom Cannell. Like that's pretty cool. I just made my own HTML element in like 4 lines of code. Yay! No, nobody? Lance isn't into it. Okay.
Does it validate?
It's not valid XML for sure. Yeah, well, not even PyCharm likes it. Like when we get into this a little bit more, it's really going to start blowing up. So this is cool, but like it's pretty static. Like we instantiate the element and it's named like Tom Cannell. Like great, that's not usable by anybody except for me. So this is where templates start coming in. So I'm going to make a template, and the way we do that is by making a DOM module tag, and that's a Polymer specific tag that's going to contain our template. So this top level template is kind of considered the host. So when you reference like the name badge element in index.html, like it's replacing this template right here. And so we'll do some CSS styling later that talks about the host, and that'll affect this template. If you like try to go in here and be like, oh, style equals background cool or whatever, like since that's a template, when you register this component, it's going to get blown away. So don't do that.
Did you say the DOM module template is a Polymer thing, or is it a web component thing?
DOM module is a Polymer thing.
Okay.
So if you're doing this in web components, you have to like do like document.create element, kind of like you would with
In a script.
Yeah.
Inside your script, you'd have to create your templates.
yeah.
Okay.
I don't touch web components. It's too crazy. It's too scary. I can't do it. So inside this, we're just going to make a little div, and we're going to put Tom Cannell. Well, cool. I don't need my like callback anymore. And if I reload this, it should look pretty much the same, except it's not, because I didn't give this an ID. This is why I like live coding, because you see all the common mistakes. So this is kind of the glue that makes all these things work together. Like I have to give my DOM module an ID so that this Polymer function invocation knows what template it's going to use. So if I save that, I've got my name back. But you'll notice if we get that menu out of the way, that we look at this element now, this has more stuff in it. It's got that div, and so you can see that template is not there, but it's now replaced with name badge, and that's super small, so I'll make it bigger. Sorry. Every time something's too small, just do this. So can everybody see that now? So we've got this cool little div with my name in it. Yes?
And this is just stock Chrome DevTools. You didn't have to install a plugin to get that?
Nope, it's built, since Web Components is built into Chrome, like this is all just like straight up DevTools. No special extensions needed or anything, it's just out of the box.
And this is pretty much cross-browser compatible.
Yeah, like, so if you're using Polymer and you have that Web Components Lite polyfill, like it allows this functionality to work on IE or Firefox. Like, of course, your like DevTools experience in IE might not be as good, but you can do name badge and it'll show my name at this point. So still, pretty boring, right? I mean, it's pretty much the same thing that we just saw. So the kind of next step is to make this dynamic. And so that's where data binding comes in. And I have to back this up a little bit. But it uses kind of the same mustache syntax. That's what these like double curly brackets are. Everybody calls them mustache syntax. And we're going to put those mustache syntax around this name, and it's not defined yet, but what those curly brackets mean is this is going to be data binding. I'm going to use the property of my object that's defined down here, and I'm going to stamp it out into this template. So I'll just kind of define that property now. And so properties is just another property on the element passed into Polymer. So inside that properties element, I can define whatever I want. And one of them is going to be name. There's a couple things that properties take, if I'm remembering this right, and one of them is type. And this is so, I'm not entirely sure I know how this works, but this is so that Polymer knows how to serialize these properties correctly into HTML. So I'm going to say it is a string because it's going to be a name. And the value is this is going to be the default value. So I'm going to say my name again. And so I've replaced my name up here with kind of this curly bracket variable that should get replaced with this default value. So we'll reload this page. And cool, it's kind of hard to see here, but pretty much looks exactly the same. Still pretty boring. So now we can go over to our index here, and I can pass in HTML attribute of, I don't know, I'm going to pick on Lance. I save that, we go over here, and just by like passing in properties to an HTML element, we're like changing what's happening on the page. But it's still a little boring because we're like hard coding Lance into this HTML element. But now that it's like an HTML property, you can just access it like you would any other HTML element. So we'll go over to my extremely small console over here. And I'm going to do document. How do I have no document? Any document? Wow. I don't know what's going on there.
It's programming.
Live coding for the win. What's that?
So that always goes. Unexpected.
Let's check out my bits here to find out what's causing this. I don't think that's it. Weird. Let's look at it. This is fun, right? What the? JSON changed. So small. Well, I don't know what's going on there. Anyway, similar to how I changed this welcome message and things updated, if my console wasn't totally blown up here, we could just do like document.query selector and get that name badge element. And I can say name badge dot name equals Todd. And with that just JavaScript change, it's like setting that value on that property of that name badge element, we would have like been able to affect the layout of this page.
Can you just modify it in your DOM tree in DevTools?
Oh yeah. Let's try that. Yeah, so let's imagine I'm using JavaScript to do this, and I'll just go
Well,
in.
it's useful to do it here too, I think. Like, you know, it looks like you're modifying your own HTML element, right?
Yeah, I mean that's basically what JavaScript is doing. It's modifying the HTML. So yeah, I can now programmatically find this name badge element and like pass in a name from like a database or user input or whatever, and it'll update. So I can go back to the default or some substring of the default, and it just updates right away. So this is starting to get cool.
It flashed in your shadow DOM too. I'll show you in your
Yeah.
in the shadow DOM. It's cool.
So anyway, that's kind of, despite whatever's going on with the router of this application, that's our first element. That's in a very few lines of code. Like we have this name badge element that's very ugly, but we can pass in data and it'll react to that. And that's the beginnings of like cool programming. So let's dress it up a bit, and this is probably kind of a yawn minute sort of thing, but I'm gonna do it anyway. We're gonna go to my name badge, and we're gonna talk about styling. I'm gonna jump ahead to styling a little bit so that this looks a little bit better. So inside your DOM module, like you have your template, but you also can like set your styles. And this is like where that scoping comes in, is your styles are scoped specifically to this element. Like it's not gonna bleed out into the rest of the application. And it's kind of experimental and I don't really understand it, but there's also a way that you can like pass in styles to each element. There used to be a way where you could like pierce through all of these like shadow DOM boundaries and just like blow away all the styling. It kind of turned out to be a little like a sledgehammer, and so that we're kind of moving away from that in Polymer. So, and it works just like you would expect. It's like just a regular like style tag, and we'll just say, let's say we got border of border top. We're gonna make it look like the meetup badge. Border top, let's say like 50 pixels, solid red. Border bottom of say like 30 pixels, solid and red. Do border radius to make the edges round, say like 10 pixels. We'll do some padding around the text.
These styles are targeting the template. Okay.
I actually haven't put a target. Thanks for pointing that out. So we'll just do, this is kind of a bad way to do it, but I'm just gonna like apply it to divs. This is gonna apply to divs within, all divs within my template. I could give this div an ID or a class like you would normally, and I can target that, use that CSS selector as well. So we'll say 10 pixels on the top, 10 pixels on the bottom, and we'll see what it looks like here. Getting there. We'll do a width here. Text line center. That should give us a reasonable facsimile of like the meetup. I don't have they're like Comic Sans or whatever they're using, but it kind of looks like a meetup name badge. So this is starting to look a little bit cooler. So now that it's not looking quite so ugly, yeah, I'm concerned about that error blowing up the rest of the presentation, but we'll keep plowing on. So we kind of talked about some of the lifecycle callbacks, and I won't demo that anymore because I think I'm running relatively long. I'll try to wrap it up by 8. So we have the created callback, and you also have attached, detached, and attribute change. So you can have a function that runs, like if I change this name attribute again, like I can have a function that runs, that does special things, not just the data binding that I have. So that's pretty cool too. So you might be wondering, well, it's cool to be able to like style the div, but we talked about like styling the template. And in order to do that, if you use a template selector, it's not going to work because as soon as that template gets stamped out, it's going to be name badge in this case. So what we have to do is use this special, I think it's called a combinator, maybe a double colons combinator. Anyway, colon host allows you to style the thing that hosts your element, whatever that template becomes. So let's just say that the host is going to be, I'll try another border, which will probably get blown away. So if I save that and reload, well, it's kind of there. That template doesn't really have any size to it, so I think the border's kind of messed up a little bit. Anyway, just so you know it's there, I obviously don't know how to use it right, but the host selector allows you to style the very top level of your custom element. Get rid of that. Just to illustrate what I was saying, I'll just say that this is the badge. ID. This is a better way to do it. So I'm setting the style on an element that has an ID of badge now, instead of just all divs. So there we go. You'll notice that this keeps saying Lance, and that's part of this, even though we have like Tom as the default, and that's part of the service worker caching stuff. We won't get into that quite yet. Okay, so any questions so far? Like that's the.
So with that ID badge, is it specifically going to do this template, or is it going to possibly span to the rest of the HTML?
So is the styling going to affect anything else?
Yeah, if you had an ID or badge somewhere else.
No, so that's that shadow DOM that we're talking about. So it might look a little weird in your rendered HTML and DevTools because you can see ID badge here. But as far as like so it's called local DOM. So like the local DOM of my element is just here.
Style scope, isn't it?
Right. I'm not sure what that class is doing, but if you have a badge elsewhere, an ID badge, like my styling for this element is not going to bleed across those boundaries. So if there's two components, they can style their badges individually. If there's a badge that's within the application as a whole that's not a component, it can be styled at the top level, and that won't cascade and blow this element away. So it gets more complicated because you're like, well, I don't want my name badge with the meetup style. I want to be able to change that. That's a whole different talk. So we'll kind of assume that it can be done, but not look into it right now.
The other question I had was, do you need anything else to run Polymer, or you just import the Polymer HTML?
That's all you need. You probably want to use that web components polyfill, that web components light that was at the very beginning. You don't have to have it for something like Chrome.
With the other browsers that do need it, does it slow them down a whole lot? I mean, of course, with something this simple, you're not going to notice anything. It's
Right.
really rendering speed.
That was one of the huge problems with 0.5 is the size of the payload of Polymer and the speed of Polymer was basically atrocious, like next to unusable in an app of any size. So that was a large part of that was that shadow DOM polyfill that they've replaced with that shady DOM shim. So it's a lot smaller, and I think on desktop Firefox the numbers were like 8 times faster for startup for entire page load. So that's pretty significant improvement. I mean, clearly I haven't written like a really in-depth application to do my own benchmarks,
Yeah,
but
like compared to Chrome with the Firefox, with the shim.
yeah. So
Like basically, it would render a page fast enough so you wouldn't notice it if you were just like reading it.
yeah.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah, so one of the themes that was coming up a lot in I/O was like kind of like a rail performance methodology, and I can't remember exactly what the acronym stands for, but it was talking about the time that you want your application to respond for like certain things, and like 10 seconds was the top cutoff, because like if you wait more than 10 seconds, you've lost the user's interest, they're gonna leave. And 1 second is what you want your page to load on. You want your page to load 1 second or faster. And if you're doing any user action, you want it at 100 milliseconds because anything longer than that, it doesn't feel instantaneous anymore.
Yeah, it's supposed to double click time.
Right. And then you get down to like the animation frame of keeping 60 frames a second. You want 16 milliseconds for that. So those are kind of like the 4 cutoffs. And all the Google apps that they were showing off, like, were able to meet those requirements with Polymer. And Polymer is being used for a lot of like Google production stuff even before it went to 1.0. So they're kind of going whole hog into it, and it's kind of cool because it can just plug into existing applications pretty easily.
So are you actively using this?
Workiva isn't using it in any way that I know. I'm just kind of using it because I'm interested in it.
So it's caught your interest in this, basically.
Yeah, I kind of like declarative approaches, and I was really into Angular JS for a while. since it feels kind of unfamiliar, I want to at least know about it. And I think it's helpful to know, because if you are like going around and like looking at websites and you're looking at stuff like Google websites, you start seeing these things and you're like,
No, it's helpful.
what is that tag? I've never seen that before in my life. Like, so I think it's good to know what's out there if nothing else. But I'm interested to use it, and I don't know, I'm gonna write an application. I just need an idea. So,
I've been kicking around for years.
what's that?
I had one I've been kicking around for years.
Don't share here, the internet's on.
Yeah. I was completely useless.
Oh, well, like most applications.
Yeah.
Well, we're kind of running short on time, so there's like a ton of stuff I want to talk about. But I think I'm gonna show one cool like helper thing, and then I think we're gonna jump straight to kind of the catalog, because that's for people that don't want to get in there and write their own modules. Like a lot of the elements that are out there in the catalog, you can just drop into your existing website and like use them without a lot of work. So in interest of time, we're gonna look at a repeating element, like a repeating helper element, and then we'll move on. So I think we can change this type to list. And so assume that our like default value is an array, is a list. And we'll just throw several people in here. Oh geez. Lance and Todd. Okay, so now my like property that was a string is now a list, and I don't think there's a syntax where you'd be able to like type HTML where you could like pass in a list in the raw HTML, but you definitely can use JavaScript to like pass in a list to the element, its property. So if I save this and reload, you can see that even though my like name is set to Lance, like things are kind of blowing up a little bit. I'm gonna try to actually load this up in something else so that I don't have Lance anymore. Sorry, Lance. So if we go here, and I know it's small, I'll make it bigger. It still says Lance. Did I change the code?
Yeah.
I did. I thought service worker was going crazy on me. Okay, so we've got these values now, but it's like clearly not working. And that's where you can use more templates. Bear with me a second. I'm going to wrap this div in another template. And so this template will actually come through when that top level, when it's stamped out, this template will remain. And if you remember that like DOM bind that was in the main application that specified the application's ID, I can do kind of a similar thing here where this template is, what is it, a DOM repeat, I think. And I'm gonna have to like go over to my snippets here to like remind me of items of the syntax. Where am I? New batch. I've forgotten that already. Items. And we will do name. It really should be names. Let's change it now. So we have a names property on our element now, and we're passing it in the same way we were before, but now we have this template that's DOM repeat, and we have the names, which needs to be data bound to the property. And now I can use item here, and we should get, if I've done this all correctly, we should get a name badge for each one of these people that I passed in. Nope.
Items.
Items versus items?
I think that's right. No. Items is like the hard-coded thing, and then
You have to use plurals then? So you have items versus items?
Items is the collection, and then like inside the DOM repeat
It's an item.
is the item. It might be blowing up because of that other stuff that's going on. I'm very.
So basically you can make an array and then you can go through and you can choose it one at a time.
Yeah, you can, like, very similar to like somebody that's, I think you were saying you're into Angular a little bit. I saw a head nodding, no. Well, if you're used to like Angular and like using the like ng repeat where you can like take like an unordered list and for each one of the bullet points, you just like make a bullet point based off the list that you pass in. You can kind of do the same thing with this DOM repeat thing in Polymer. So, that was a spectacular failure. Any questions about that?
Yeah, I have some questions. Where did you go to learn this and what tools did you use?
So, polymerproject.org, polymer-project.org. Pop over the slides if you want. Not those slides. So these are some of the things we're going to go through, but these are kind of the resources you want to use, like the documentation for the, it's kind of hard to understand because it is kind of a different approach, but polymerproject.org. And there's a good series on YouTube done by Rob Dodson called Polycast. And you can follow these two guys, Rob Dodson and Adi Osmani, on G+. They're always posting new stuff about Polymer. So my stuff was like pretty simplistic, but what I really want to show you is, and this will be the last thing, is going to Polymer Project, since you brought it up. We can go to guides and resources, and this is where all the documentation is. But there's also, this is all written in Polymer, just in case you were wondering. You can go over here, and we have an app drawer and a scroll area, like all these things that sound super unfamiliar, and a site banner. Wow, you can actually read this without even like, I don't have to like scan IDs or anything. Like I know that's a site banner. I don't even have to like inspect to know it. Anyway, I'll stop getting excited and I'll go to show you what I meant to show you. So another thing is you notice that reactive design, as this page got bigger, this drawer became just a menu, but as I just like slide, it becomes even smaller and the header gets smaller. And this is as if I were on a mobile application. I can like fire up a full like mobile emulator and have the same sort of thing happen. Anyway, back on track. I'm gonna open up this menu.
Basically, you didn't have to code that, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, they just use these
Yeah.
elements that like do the heavy lifting, like figuring out the width of your viewport and like responding to that. But as far as they're concerned, they just like put in this like app drawer on the left side over here that just knows how to do that. They didn't have to like roll up themselves.
I spent a day and a half trying to make a site responsive.
I would have spent a week trying to do it
Yeah.
and failed.
I can fix your error, Tom.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, change list to array in the for the type of your names property.
Thanks. It's
Yeah.
better work.
Well,
Huh. Yay! That's or
Hero of the
take
day.
the
Thank you.
So yeah, we don't have any padding between these elements, but we like passed in an array and we get 3 name badges. Like pretty simplistic, but also pretty cool considering you just have like a name badge element. I keep driving that home. So this will be more impressive. We're gonna go to the catalog. I'm gonna show you that to you.
You're saying that this is used a lot in Google Apps.
Yeah. So like Google Play just like redesigned, or at least the music side of it redesigned, and it's all using Polymer. The Polymer project website, as you saw, is using Polymer, of course, and that's a Google thing. I think the Dartlang website is using Polymer, although it's probably written Dart. We want to get into it. There's a lot of Google stuff using Polymer for sure. Their whole conference website that they made for last week was all written in Polymer. And that's, if anybody's interested, you can go on GitHub and they open source the whole website after the event. So that's a really good example of getting into Polymer. And it has all the hot new stuff. It has like push notifications for the web. It has service worker offline caching and like a bunch of stuff that's not Polymer specific. So this is the Polymer catalog, and that Polymer starter kit you get for free, these iron elements and paper elements. There's these bundles that allow you to get them all at once rather than having to get them one by one. So if I click into these, you can see, it's very small, but you can see, ooh, reactive design again. You can see like all these various elements that exist.
What's the shopping cart for?
We'll get to that. That's the cool part. So we'll go back to top level catalog. So iron elements is kind of like the core elements of Polymer, and paper elements are all the ones that implement the material design spec from Google. And gold elements, which I hope to get here real quick, provide like credit card form functionality, so you don't have to do any of your validation or anything. It just like works for you, which is pretty exciting if you've ever had to like program any of that stuff. Neon elements isn't really a thing yet, nor are molecules. They're kind of works in progress. The platinum elements are all about like the hot new platinum-y sort of things in Chrome for like offline caching and push notifications. We won't get into that because we don't have time. But I do want to show you, these are probably the most exciting things of all, because if you've ever wanted to like implement Google technologies, you have to like get into Google Developer Console, you have to like sign up for an API, you have to learn the API, and it takes quite a while. With Polymer, you can just be like, you know what? I want Google Map to be on my page. And you could do like kind of an iframe sort of thing where they like give you the like shareable URL and you like paste it into your page, but that's like not very like programmable. It's not very friendly. So what you can do here, I want to add that to my cart. You can add a whole bunch of elements to your cart and then check out. And it shows you what you have, and then you can either like download this as a folder, or you can just download a Bower or JSON file, so you can just like throw that into your project and Bower install and you get all this stuff. But if you already have an existing Bower, you can just like copy this command here, and has the Bower install command to get all of your elements. I mean, it's kind of
geeky. I like that.
it's kind of nifty. It's kind of cheesy, but so you don't have to type all that stuff. But it's kind of nice. And it's also cool because most of these elements have like little demos, so you can actually like get an idea of what the component does. And this is like all out of the box. Like you just say like paper button, and based off the attributes that you choose, you can be like, I want this button with this ink effect. I want it to be colorful. I want no ink when I click it. See how it doesn't do the splash effect. And these ones that are toggleable, it gets dark.
Nice, you're gonna be fun stuff.
Yeah, so this is like, you could just spend all day going through this catalog and playing with these different elements. And I kid you not, you just like type paper button and you like get this for free. You don't have to like design it, you don't have to like write any CSS, you don't have to do anything. It's pretty cool. And it works with whatever framework you're using. Devil's in the details, of course, but we will jump into the map that I wanted to show you, and I already have it downloaded for interest of time. And you can see that I am not importing it there, maybe up top. Yes. So we'll just actually let's go through this whole process because I think I wiped things out. Does anybody want me to like stop talking right now? Everybody wants to see the money. Okay, so I'm going to copy this Bower command. I'm going to hop over to my terminal and I'm going to install that. Super small. So just like that, I have my Google Map. I'm going to jump over to my snippet here, which you can't really see right now, but when I paste it in, you'll be able to see it.
You make them really large for cool people.
Yeah, I'll pop over here where we can see it. So I need to import the element still, but I'll just walk you through it. So we have a Google Map tag, and it has a whole bunch of different attributes, but I'm just passing in a latitude and longitude just happens to be Missoula. And I'm setting the zoom level, and I'm like setting the size of the map that I want to show. And then inside of that map element, kind of like a div, I'm specifying a Google map marker with a latitude and longitude of the Workiva office. And so if anybody's ever set up like Google Maps, like it's kind of like, it's not hard, but it's like a lot of boilerplate to like stand it up. So this is like pretty exciting for me, because you just like throw it in and you can like, I can use JavaScript to like change the latitude and longitude, and that map's gonna like fly around. That's like pretty sweet. So let me import this over here.
If you had a My Map, a Google My Map up there, how are you gonna identify that map?
I do not know that, but
I thought you knew everything.
we could look at the API, and you might be able to specify like a save map or something. I don't know.
Could you add a new mapper or marker elements to the?
Yeah, you could have like a whole slew of markers in there, so you could like programmatically stack up a bunch of like map markers inside of that element.
And the map element will respond to change.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
Our components.
That just makes it where it'd be harder for other people to use your map. It's right now clear from the on Google Maps.
So I've imported my element, and I hope my error that I was having isn't getting in the way of this. Nope. So with like 3 lines of code, I have a Google map here that's fully functional, like zooming and a little laggy for whatever reason. It's full scrolling. I can't click on that marker, but I can like add things to that marker that would have like the little like pop-up that you're used to when clicking on markers. So this I was kind of getting into nuts and bolts so you can see how this works, but this is the real power of web components, I think, is just like to very clearly like throw something on the screen, and like anybody reading your web page that's trying to figure it out, like other developers that you're working with, be like, oh, there's that tag that says Google Map. I know what that is. So I think that's pretty darn cool. So again, just for effect, that's what that looks like. And I wrote like a Google Map thing that was very similar to that like a year and a half ago, and it was probably like 500 lines long. So that's pretty exciting. And the last thing I want to show you is kind of those credit card fields. Because anybody who's done that knows it's kind of a pain in the butt. So I have this all the CC tag that I made here, and I think I have everything else set up. So I'm just going to load this up and cross my fingers. So there's this little component that I made that sets the border around these various input fields, and for free I can like type in a card number, and it's like, oh, that's a Visa. And it's validating my date for me. If I say like 23 of 15, that's not going to fly, but I can say 12 of 15. That's not going to fly either for whatever reason. 3 of 20, there we go. To Missoula, you can do a fake email address. And you can see all these like paper effects that I'm getting that are part of the material design spec. And that's glued up, and oh, I get that paper effect again. And as soon as I start typing, you'll see that phone number title slide up in a cool way. So 33333, best number. And submitting is kind of broken right now. I ran out of time. But I want to show you the code for this real quick, and we'll be done. So as you can see, I just had this tag that said all the CC, which is kind of obscure. I should have said like credit card box or something. But I have no excuse. But this is what it looks like. I'll make it bigger. So up at the top, I'm just importing Polymer, and I'm importing all the things I'm using, like that paper button at the bottom, the CVC input, the expiration input, credit card input, email, phone, zip.
And
all
you
those
got on
things.
this like shopping?
Yep. I mean, I went to the gold thing over here, and I said, you know what? I want the gold, and I just like added these all to my cart, and like so I want to add all of them, and then just ran this command on my command line, or you could just download them and stuff them in yourself if you wanted to. So I just import them. I kind of style my container on my own, but then this is all the code for all of that. Is just this gold CC input and the CVC, like all those things that you saw in that way. And I'm just saying, I want you to auto validate it, and I'm like specifying like the input name like you would with a normal like input field in a form. But that's it. But anybody who's done like styling, like all those animations and stuff, if you were doing that on your own, that would be a significant amount of work. And if you're trying to implement the material design spec, which I don't know, like Google likes data, and data shows that people that like switch over to material design, like they were running some numbers, like 500 companies tried it and like got like 30% increase in sales just by changing the design to material design. I mean, that's pretty cool, because usually like design's like, oh, I like this better, no, I like that better. Anyway, I think that's pretty exciting to have this, I don't know, like 14 lines of code be able to do something like this. Maybe it's not totally applicable in a large company that does like custom software like Workiva, but if you're like a web developer that's like trying to stand up a shopping cart that's like, that isn't part of like WordPress or something, but it's like keyed to a specific like business need or like business flow, like that's pretty exciting to just be able to like in like 15 minutes get all that for free. I think it's pretty cool, and that's kind of what Elements in Polymer is all about. So with that, this is my little custom thank you tag. You can follow me on G+ or hit me up with questions afterward. I have my email there. And I'm available to chat afterwards for anybody that wants to be bored to tears.
Thank you.
So thanks for coming, everybody.
Thanks, Tom.
So Tom.
Yeah.
Those, what was that, the paper effects, the class effects that you were showing, like filled in the credit card form where the label floated up in the trunk? Are there some default alternative behaviors?
Let's find out.
Everything looks like Google.
We're after the talk, so let's figure it out.
Like everything, it would be like, back in the.
So this is kind of like for
I can't even remember the name of it.
for you more programmery types of people. Like it's cool to see kind of like the API like documentation. But it feels kind of weird because you're like not used to seeing HTML tags have like an API documentation. It feels weird to me. But being able to see like, oh well, I've got these like properties and like methods on an element. This feels a little weird, but it's cool because you can actually like programmatically like select your element with query selector or get document by ID or get element by ID or whatever, and then like call validate on it programmatically like after people have submitted or something. I don't know, like it's cool. So yeah, down here by styling is talking about this paper input container, which all of these gold elements are extending from. So I think it's linked down here at the bottom, paper input behavior. And this is some of the like mix-in stuff and the more fancy stuff we haven't talked about.
So yeah, there's something like flip. Okay.
I bet you somebody's done like Polymer for Bootstrap if you're wanting to another design.
Here we go.
Oh no, I mean the only design I've done is.
So this is pretty much what you're looking for. Like you can. So this is part of the like the new style API where you can actually like pass in a configuration object to an element that'll like do styling. It's half baked. It's not really figured out right now, but you can like have an element that actually has like a property of -- paper input container color, which looks really weird in code. But and then you can like pass like a CSS value or a whole like object of CSS to set that. But yeah, like so these are the things that just at the common level for all those elements you can configure in a way. So since they're like in that same family, you should be able to style them all in one kind of like scorched earth approach by having one object instead of having to style them all individually. And that's what it's trying to avoid. So there was like a combinator of like : shadow that would allow you to like go one level deep into custom elements. But there's also like the /deep selector, which would just go all the way, it would pierce all levels of shadow DOM. So yeah, you could like style things the way you wanted, but it would start, like if you were talking about the ID badge, like you'd start having weird conflicts because you were like, you got all the scoping where things are supposed to be constrained and let's ignore it all now. So yeah, I don't have any good advice on how to do this exactly, but it's kind of in flight, but it's going to be there.
You already guessed at how long this is gonna last.
You know, I don't know.
I know, that's like looking into the crystal ball, but
I mean,
Seems pretty well thought out.
Is Google working to standardize what Polymer does so that it's more?
well, that's the thing is Polymer is just sugar on top of web components. So you can do all of this stuff, well, most of this stuff, in web components. Like some of the things that you get that's not standard with Polymer is like that repeating template that we did, and like some of the event stuff. So you can actually go on like that Polymer object definition, you know, call Polymer and pass it in the object. You can actually, there's like event handlers that adjust to your shadow DOM, so like things don't get retargeted weirdly. So you can just in that object say like tap : and then like reference a function that's like part of that that object. So you can have like your own callbacks. And I don't think that's part of web components, but all that event handling is just built in. It's really easy. You just like say tap, or you can actually go, and that's a great thing I didn't talk about is, I'm getting excited, sorry. There's a bunch of, if you've ever implemented like mobile events in a web browser, like they're not very well supported right now, like gestures. And Polymer, and I'm certain this isn't part of web components, Polymer has like a gesture recognition system. So you can actually just say like on track as a HTML attribute and just pass it a function, and you get an event with .details on it that has like your starting XY, your like incremental XY, like your total XY, and then like it tells you the state of that gesture. So like kind of all those things that you would like need like Hammer.js or something like rolling your own to do. Like Polymer has like all that gesture recognition built in, and I'm almost certain that's not a web components thing. So there's definitely stuff that's not standard, but as far as like making custom components and having those attributes that you can data bind and stuff like that, that's all stock standardized web components.
Do you know if IE and Safari are planning on supporting web components?
Yeah, I mean, we can maybe try looking at here. I don't know, web components, maybe. Yeah, so we got Shadow DOM, and that's one of the things that like only Chrome's figured out how to do in Opera, oddly. So it's pretty like hot new stuff, but like Firefox is working on it, and yeah, like I don't know, but it doesn't really matter. That's what's great about Polymer is you have that polyfill and the performance is pretty good. So it doesn't matter that IE isn't implementing it because you can do it anyway. It's just not native, which might be slower, maybe. It's hard to say because they haven't implemented, so you don't know if their implementation will be slower or not. But yeah, it looks pretty grim looking at this IE column.
What was that HTML template support look like? Firefox has it too?
They're getting there. Yeah, so you can have those in our templates.
Safari.
I don't know what it looks like if you're trying to do web components without that polyfill, what the behavior is like in other browsers. Just use Polymer, man.
what an interesting idea.
Yeah, so as far as like sticking around, I can't answer that, but I know professionally, like here at Workiva and just like people I know, like people are talking about web components, like not the technology, but just like encapsulated pieces of websites that are portable. Like people talk about that a lot because, I mean,
Code reuse.
what's that? Yeah, it's about encapsulation and code reuse, and
It's saving money.
it's saving money, and websites are in native and all these devices. It's just like so much work. Like everybody's trying to find a way to like make it easier, make it consistent. So I don't know if it'll catch on or not. I think it's pretty cool though. I got no answers for that.
So, give me a good idea.
Google's pushing it pretty hard. I mean, at I/O last week, the entire theme of the conference was Android. Like, there was maybe 15 minutes of web technologies mentioned, and those 15 minutes were all Polymer. And that doesn't mean there's nothing going on the web, but this is the only thing that they felt worth mentioning, I guess. So
Amazing to me how many small business owners do not understand that a majority of the people hitting their websites are on mobile. They just don't get it.
yeah, and that was the in the keynote. That's what they talked about. Is there's like 1 billion people on the web now, and most of those people start on desktop, but most of them are accessing the web through their mobile devices now. And the next 1 billion people, that their first like computer experience is going to be on phones, because it does. Most people like having a big bulky computer, like it just doesn't make sense, and they don't even necessarily have the facilities to support it. But if they can do something over the air, the next 1 billion people are going to be in like developing countries that don't have the infrastructure to do anything but wireless and can't afford big beefy machines, but they can get a one-on-one cell phone for $200 or something. And that'll be their first computer experience, first internet experience.
Well, most of the world's first computer experience. America's not different.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, there's all this talk about like mobile development, like is native better, or is like all these like things like Ionic or PhoneGap or Cordova, which Ionic uses to get HTML and CSS on phone devices, like which is better, which is more sustainable. I don't know the answer to that, but it's cool to think that you could write a component that's adaptive, and not only could use it for websites and mobile websites, but also like throw it into an application, a phone application that's using one of those like HTML inside of a phone technologies, and you can use that component in all 3 arenas and have like one code base. Like that's pretty exciting. Like most people's
That's
like,
extremely powerful.
yeah, I mean, Workiva is like pretty badass, and we still have like separate code bases for our web-based technologies and our phone application and our iOS phone application. It's all over the place, so I don't know what's gonna happen. It's pretty exciting though, exciting times. Y'all don't have to stay. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
No, we don't, but yeah, we are, so we were playing, but other than that, we were going.